Alfred Hitchcock was one of the first movie directors to become universally recognized. In the old days, people didn't talk about directors as much as they did the actors. I guess maybe because the actors were in front of the camera. They're the ones people actually see. But Hitchcock himself became a well-known personality. He appeared in the trailers to his movies, speaking to the audience. He made cameos in all his films, and he hosted his own long-running TV show, Alfred Hitchcock Presents. His movies have a distinct style. They were usually crime thrillers, often with twist endings. He pioneered the suspense genre, used a lot of point-of-view shots, injected his own personal fears into his films. So when you see a Hitchcock movie, it's very easy to identify that it's a Hitchcock movie. He's what they call an auteur, meaning that he's regarded as the author, the artist who made the films. Movies are a collaborative art. There's writers, there's storyboard artists, directors of photography, producers. But Hitchcock gave it such a strong signature that you get the sense he had complete creative control and that it's his movie. He made over 50 films in his career, and to this day, he's influenced film students all around the world. And all of today's famous filmmakers, from Steven Spielberg to Christopher Nolan. Now, there's younger generations that are starting to learn about his films who might be the next famous filmmaker. I don't know why it took me so long to do a video about Alfred Hitchcock. It's long overdue, but it seems like a good time because there's been a lot going on with Hitchcock recently. There was a huge Blu-ray set just released that has tons of his movies for the first time ever in one big package. There were 2 feature films based on him that just came out. One of them was called Hitchcock, starring Anthony Hopkins. That was in theaters. Select theaters, apparently, because I didn't get to see it. And the other one was made for TV called The Girl, which focused on Tippi Hedren, and was actually really shocking. It made him out to be a tyrant and a pervert. I don't know what the real-life facts are, but, not to get off topic. For those who are just getting into Hitchcock for the first time and want to know where to start, and you don't have time to watch 50-plus films, this is it. This is where I think you should start. This is my top 10 Alfred Hitchcock movies. Number 10, The Birds. The synopsis is a bunch of birds attack people. There's not much to it. This is the kind of plot that sounds like a B movie, but somehow got made into a big-budget A movie by a critically acclaimed director. The same thing happened to Jaws. It sounded like a B movie. It's a shark that attacks people, although Spielberg wasn't a critically acclaimed director yet at the time. But it had the same concept, nature attacks. The bird attacks are sometimes unconvincing. It's a little cheesy with the blue screen shots and all that, but the suspense is strong and it works. Number 10, not my favorite Hitchcock movie, but it has a legacy, so it deserves a spot on the list. Number 9, Strangers on a Train. The less said about these movies, the better. You really should just watch them for yourself rather than me explain it to you. But basically, there's a guy who wants to murder a family member. He figures if he has a complete stranger do the job for him, there would be nothing to connect, so he would get away with it. So he meets a stranger on a train and suggests they swap murderers, assuming that they each have somebody they each want dead. Now, the other guy wants nothing to do with it and gets wrapped up in this whole mess. Check it out. Good stuff. Number 8, Shadow of a Doubt. In a peaceful town, an innocent girl finds out that her uncle who's visiting might just be a wanted man for murder. From 1943, I think this is Hitchcock's earliest masterpiece. He made many films before, starting in the silent era, but this is the first one that's a definite Hitchcock classic, and it happened to be his own personal favorite. Number 7, The Man Who Knew Too Much. This is a remake of his own 1934 film. It has a theme that's common in many of his films. That's where an innocent person gets into some serious trouble. This time, it's Jimmy Stewart, who's on vacation with his family and accidentally learns about an assassination plot. The terrorists who are planning the assassination kidnap his son to keep him silent so he doesn't tell the police. and then he has to go on a big adventure to get his son back. The movie works well because you're emotionally invested in what's going on. You want to see these parents get their son back, so we are in his place and we're just along with the ride. Number 6, Dial M for Murder. One thing interesting to note was that it was shot in 3D, so it was one of the early 3D movies. Basically, it's about a guy who wants to murder his wife, so he blackmails somebody to commit the crime for him. They have a whole plan set up, but it goes terribly wrong. I can't say anything more than that because I'll end up spoiling the movie. The plot is so simple, yet somehow so intriguing. It makes you think, if you were an attempting murderer, what would you do in the situation, and are all the footsteps and traces clean? The outcome is something so obvious, but like the best of magicians, Hitchcock strings you along and distracts you from the simple facts. Number 5, Rope. This is one of Hitchcock's first color films, maybe even his first actually. So 2 guys do a thrill kill. They kill somebody just for fun, hide his body inside a wooden trunk, and then invite guests over who are oblivious that there's a dead body in the room. They even have dinner on top of the trunk. It's a great example of Hitchcock's dark sense of humor and his expertise at suspense. The whole time, you're biting your nails waiting for somebody to discover the body. The tension is unbearable. The entire movie takes place in real time in what's supposed to be one continuous long shot, like a rope, which is also the murder weapon in the film. This is a fun fact that seems to overshadow how great the movie is. Everybody talks about how it was done in one long take, then they watch it and are disappointed that it cuts every 10 minutes. The reason was that they couldn't fit any more film in the camera than 10 minutes at a time, so it would have been technically impossible to leave the camera running for its entire feature length. So whenever it cuts, Hitchcock tries to disguise it by moving the camera behind somebody's back, and in some cases, like the close-up on Jimmy Stewart near the end, the cut is straightforward and obvious. But that's not to say it's still really impressive. The actors needed to perform flawlessly for long periods of time as if they were performing on stage. The movie begins in daylight and ends at nighttime, so you see the light in the windows go down gradually throughout the course of the film. And the camera almost becomes a character itself, the audience's character who knows that there's a dead body. There's times when the camera is looking at something that none of the characters in the film are paying attention to, and there's lots of off-screen dialogue. It really is a masterpiece and is just well made all around. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about with Rope, so let's move on. Now, don't expect any more surprises. The top 4 are so good, they're indisputable. These are the same top 4 that are likely to appear on anyone's list. So I know I'm not being original here, but these really are his 4 best. But in what order, though? Well, it hardly matters, but this is how I place them. Number 4, Rear Window. Jimmy Stewart plays a photographer who's used to taking pictures in exotic and dangerous places. His girlfriend, played by Grace Kelly, is the complete opposite. She's into fashion and culinary arts. He's into adventure. She's more domestic. He's rugged. She's insanely beautiful and too perfect for him. So they're having their differences about it. And what does it take for them to bond back and reconnect? What else? Solving a murder case together. Stewart, whose character is named Jeffrey, is healing a broken leg and passes the time spying on his neighbors. He suspects one of them has committed murder. At first, no one believes him, but he works out all the clues and convinces everybody. The plot is very straightforward. Anyone who's expecting some kind of twist ending, it just doesn't happen. What makes the movie good is the dialogue and the acting. Jimmy Stewart is very natural, and so is Grace Kelly, and Thelma Ritter as Jeffrey's nurse. She's great, and how many movies can you say that? Oh, that supporting character, the nurse, was so good she's worth mentioning. But it's true, she's amazing. The other thing is the camera never leaves the room. Even when something's happening all the way across the street, You see it through Jeffrey's window and through his binoculars. So it puts you in his place, and through his eyes, you get a sense of the whole neighborhood. And there's something really creepy about it, too, that there could be a murder going on right next to home. So who knows what goes on behind closed windows. Number 3, Psycho. Before Halloween, before Texas Chainsaw Massacre, this is the first of its kind. A psychopathic killer with a body count. This is a movie that's all about the twists. It has a crazy, unpredictable plot. I can't even talk about this movie without giving some spoilers. I think everyone knows it's about this guy named Norman Bates, played by Anthony Perkins, who runs a motel off the beaten track and lives with his mother, who just might be out of her mind. Janet Leigh is said to be the star of the film. Well, that's what audiences in 1960 expected. She steals some money and leaves town, so already we're thinking she's the star, and it's all about if she's going to get away with the money or not. Well, early in the film, she checks into the motel and gets stabbed to death in the shower. It's one of the most famous movie scenes of all time, and it's probably the biggest discussion point of the film. Just the fact that she's dead. Who has the balls to kill off the main character like that in the beginning of the movie? So the whole film takes a 90-degree turn. Our star is dead. What now? Well, obviously, the money, right? That's the only thing that it could do. So, who's going to get the money? Well, next thing, Norman's cleaning the room and obliviously throws the money away. As in, it's gone. It's not coming back. Nobody's ever going to find that money again. So, when the cops show up at the motel, they have a pretty good reason to believe he killed the girl. For the money, right? But Norman doesn't even know about it. And it's so frustrating to watch. You just want to jump into the movie and explain that it's all a misunderstanding. And that's why it's great. It's unnerving and it keeps you on the edge of your seat. Number 2, North by Northwest. It's the ultimate reluctant hero story about an innocent man who's being chased all across the country by both the police who think he's a terrorist and actual terrorists who think he's a government agent. Hell-bent on finding the real agent, he goes on a quest. As the plot unravels and gets even more complicated, he finds out the agent never existed, a decoy planted by the FBI, but now that he's assumed the role, he's enlisted to actually become the fake agent he was originally trying to prove he was not. It'll make your head explode. Cary Grant is phenomenal in the role, speaking rapidly, making smart comebacks to everything. You believe that a guy with his personality could get himself into such a mess. This is like the precursor to the James Bond and Indiana Jones films, both a hilarious comedy and a suspenseful thriller, both rolled into one. And the number 1 Hitchcock film? Vertigo. Of course, all 4 Jimmy Stewart movies had to make the list. This time he plays Scotty, a detective who suffers from acrophobia, a fear of heights. One of his fellow police officers dies trying to save him from a rooftop, and he has a guilt complex over it. He retires from the force, but as a favor for an old friend, he accepts one last job to watch over his friend's suicidal wife. He desperately falls in love with her and tries to save her from the top of a steeple where he is once again conflicted by his acrophobia. Why is Vertigo so great? Well, it doesn't exactly start off with a bang. It takes time to lure you in. There's long scenes without dialogue, but with that beautiful hypnotic score by composer Bernard Herrmann. After the midpoint, when he's on the steeple, that's when the film's true power unfolds and sucks you right in. The second half, Scotty descends into madness and obsession, and you really feel what he's feeling. The movie just takes you over. Recently, it attracted a lot of attention by replacing Citizen Kane as the best movie of all time, according to some poll. Now, I think calling Vertigo the best film of all time is probably a stretch, but I'm happy to see it knock Citizen Kane off its throne. Who cares about what some poll says anyway? There's no best film of all time. It's too impossible to choose. So don't let Vertigo disappoint you because the film critics hyped it up too much. It's just a great, great movie. Don't think of it as the best, but I will say it's the best Hitchcock movie.